and welcome to the Pots and Trowels podcast with me and Jill, and we're joined around the table by Sean.
Hello,
Yay.
I'm here in person.
Oh, it's so nice to see you.
Well, I knocked on the door because I thought you can't go off to another show. I'm coming round to your house.
And under the table we've got Marley. Marley's
Yay.
come as
Hey,
well.
Marley.
Hi, Marley.
Hello, Marley.
Woof, woof.
There you go.
He's not impressed.
On today's episode, I'm going to be having a chat with Amrit from the South Devon chilli farm to find out everything you need to know about growing chillies.
And I'll be having a think about some of the things you can do with chillies in the kitchen. So we're going to spice up our taste buds. And then Martin's got some jobs for us to be getting on with in the garden.
And last but definitely not least, we've got some questions from our listeners. One on spacing in the border when you're planting out a border, and one on some of the finer details of taking cuttings. But first off, let's go and meet Amrit.
So Amrit, how did this all start for you? How did the South Devon chilli farm be in your hands?
Oh, well, the South Devon chilli farm started off life about 23, 25 years ago. It was a few friends that started it off after leaving corporate jobs in London, and they moved down to Devon and set up the business. And fast forward sort of 21 years, they retired, and my wife and I, Jenny, we bought it and are carrying on the tradition of growing chillies.
Right. So have you got a background in horticulture?
Not really. To some extent, yes, and to some extent, no. So I did study up to GCSE level agricultural science, because I'm from Trinidad and Tobago originally, and back there, agricultural science is a core subject for everybody.
Right.
So you learn animal husbandry, you learn plant care, horticulture, but up to GCSE level. Surprisingly, some of the content that we learn is at university level, but it's just because of the way of life there, growing food and vegetables. And my family are farmers, sort of pineapple, papaya, sugarcane, that sort of thing. My grandparents used to grow a lot of coffee and cacao and stuff like that. And I just sort of was always around growing things. So I think it's in my blood to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I did have some educational background to horticulture, but I'm not a horticulturalist
But
by
I
any
think,
means.
isn't that a good idea that everybody has to study it at school to that level? Just to give them
Absolutely.
that sort of the basics.
I mean, at the age of 10, I think you learn how to germinate seeds, you learn how to harvest, you learn what pests look like, you learn what weeds look like, and you get tested on it. And you have to have your own little vegetable patch, and you get checked for predators and things like that. And at that very early age, you just learn how to grow stuff, and you learn how food is produced. I think things are changing, not for the better, but But if you're from that part of the world, and most people have a kitchen garden, and if you're with your parents outside, you just learn how to grow stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And we need to get that back here in the UK. So if the agricultural minister's listening, come and speak to Amrit. He'll tell you how to do it.
I don't understand why it's not just part of the curriculum.
I know. Yes.
It's bizarre.
Absolutely. 100% behind you.
Yeah.
But you didn't go on to do that as a profession, did you?
No, absolutely not. If I had stayed in the Caribbean, I would have ended up down the extension officer route, because I have a lot of friends who ended up that way, where they go and inspect horticultural businesses and stuff for pests and diseases and things. I didn't go down that route. I ended up becoming a geologist in the UK, and becoming a petroleum geologist and a petroleum engineer up in Aberdeen.
Right.
In oil and gas. So completely different.
Very different, yes.
Surprisingly, a lot of the skills there, especially from the engineering point of view, from a troubleshooting, is proving to be useful. You don't appreciate it at a time when you become an engineer. You think like an engineer for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You see a problem and you want to try and fix it.
Well, that's good. Yeah, well, I think those two work well together, don't they? So big change from being a geologist, an engineer, to taking over the chilli farm. So steep learning curve.
Steep learning curve. Yes. Because you go from being a number in a crowd in a big organisation to just having to manage this thing now and take it forward, and the buck stops with you. The responsibility stops with you. So that's a big challenge. We took on the business, and we focused more on the food manufacturing for the first bit, just because that was the most newest thing to us to get used to. Because obviously food manufacturing from a health and safety point of view, and manufacturing from a traceability and all of that.
Yeah, so
to get products into
chili sauces,
exactly,
that type of thing.
We make huge amounts of sauces and chili jams. Our chili jam is our best-selling product by far, and we were trying to get more and more food hygiene certifications to get us into more and more shops. So that took a bit more my time in terms of learning what's going on. From the horticultural side, we've got a horticulturalist, a horticultural manager, and he looks after the plants and the crops, and I was just sort of working alongside him, learning what he's doing, trying to change things a little bit if I saw something that I want to do differently, but by and large we're carrying on the tradition that was established.
And what sort of quantities of plants are you growing, just to give listeners an idea of how big the farm is, because you're not just growing in a little 8x6 greenhouse, it's quite a big scale.
It's quite a big scale, yeah. So the farm itself is about 10 acres, and within that space we use about 50% of it, and we've got 8 large polytunnels. So these are 50-meter long polytunnels, quite big. And we grow on average we harvest about up to 5 tons of fresh chilies every year.
That's a lot of chilies.
Yeah, it's a lot of chilies. So that does mean it's a lot of plants. And one large tunnel will hold about 750 plants. So there's a lot of plants to get established as a crop plant to then plant out, and alongside everything else.
Exactly, and these are all being grown as annuals, so you're sowing the seed every year and starting from scratch.
It's a whole program of events that has to happen, where at the end of we start at the end of the year with cleaning out the tunnels, ripping everything out, but come January we sow seeds, we prep tunnels, we dig over everything, re-rotivate, re-plow, form the beds, lay the plastics down, put all the staging that requires to grow the crops. That has to be happening alongside all the seedlings for sale. So it's a non-stop.
Yeah. So how many in the business now?
So I think we've got about 13 full-time staff and another handful or so part-time working in the farm shop.
That's a lot of staff.
So it's a lot of staff. It's a lot of bills to pay. A lot of staff to gets paid before me and all of that.
Okay.
But it's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, but you obviously enjoy it. I can tell you enjoy it.
When you have the good days, you enjoy it. When you have the bad days, you have to kind of remember what those good days look like.
Do you think you wish you were back in Aberdeen then?
Not with the current state of the North Sea and the oil industry there. But when you get, my favourite time of the year is when you get a nice sort of spring day at the farm. When the last frost is gone, you can remove the fleeces from the seedlings, and you come to the farm in the morning and you've got lots of seedlings there looking happy, and you don't have any aphids. The sun's coming up and it's nice and warm. It's still chilly outside but warm in the tunnels. You know you're off to a start.
Yeah.
And that just carries on through the rest of the summer. The tensest moments is at the start of the year.
Yeah, I can imagine, like for anybody growing. So, do you know roughly how many plants you're growing a year? Because you're growing plants for your own polytunnels to grow for a crop of chili peppers to harvest, but then you also sell plants to the public, quite a lot of plants. So you must have a huge seed sowing program at the beginning of the year.
It's a huge program, yeah. We've got a staggered sowing, and I think, so using last year's numbers, we sowed roughly about, we aimed for about 20 to 24,000 seedlings, and that probably required us to sow about 30,000 seeds. And then those seedlings, that's to make sure if we have any die-offs, we can be protected against that. But then that's a huge number of seedlings to prick out and get onto the benches, because inevitably something will die somewhere along the way. But we need the quantities of plants, because a lot of these plants people pay us in advance for. So we have people placing orders October, November, December for plants that they will receive in the post come April, May, when the seedlings are ready. So they pre-order these things. We've taken money. We have to get plants out to them.
You've got to come up with the results.
Yeah, exactly.
You? And how many different types of chili peppers do you grow? I mean, we're looking at your stand here, and you've got lots of plants for sale and some on display as well, to show people what they look like when they mature. But you've got a huge range of really unusual chili peppers here.
We've got a lot. I think this year is close to 50 odd varieties that we're growing from a commercial point of view, to sell as fresh chilies online, to harvest and make into sauces. And then, apart from that, in total it's probably about over 100 varieties we grow for seed collecting and everything else. And that number, around 100 mark, that changes depending on what seed quantities we need to collect and stuff. But it's a huge number of varieties, especially when the seed bank depletes and we need to replenish that. Because you need fresh seeds every year, but you don't need to be collecting a huge number from each variety every year, so you kind of chops and changes a bit.
Yes.
But it does mean with that many varieties, it's really hard. There's no easy way of doing it, of managing those numbers of varieties which look identical at a seedling stage.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, you can't afford to get your labels mixed up, can you?
Every year we say we're not going to mix up labels, and every year there is a number of mix-ups going on in the tunnel, and we're standing there looking at it thinking, not sure which is which now. And then when they fruit, you can kind of make sense of it. But in some cases, by that point, it's a bit too late.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Okay, well, what we'll do, we're going to take a little break, but then what we'll do, we'll chat later, look at some of the different varieties you've got, and hopefully get some tips of you if people want to have a go at growing them, how they can get started next year.
Yep.
Thank you, Amrit.
Thank you.
I think that's fantastic. That I'm picking up on what Amrit was saying about the education and having it as a core subject. I think that's wonderful. Isn't that brilliant? I mean, I wish I'd learnt more about growing when I was at school.
Yeah, I mean, going back older than me, I think rural studies was commonplace at schools. They had a garden and they kept a few hens, because the comprehensive school I went to, they still had the area, but they'd stopped when I went there. So that's a long time ago. That was in the early 70s when I started com. So it's a shame. I think they should bring it back. I think that's something that lots of junior schools already have gardens, but once it gets to secondary school, there's nothing, is there?
Yeah, it's so much focus on the exams that you are, having to work towards. I mean, Jill, you've got a teaching background,
as an ex-teacher, it's just finding the time to do it, and as much as you would love to, unless it fits into the curriculum in some way, which I think there are areas of the curriculum now that cover that, but unless it's there, the teachers just haven't got time. Plus, you're talking about huge numbers of children as well, especially in a secondary school. You wouldn't have the space to be able to devote enough to a garden.
I think we should make space. Yeah.
But in primary schools, I know the RHS have a scheme, don't they, that they go into schools and very much involve the schools and get schools into their shows as well. I mean, which show was it that we were at? We were chatting to Chris Collins at Malvern Spring Show. We chatted to Chris Collins, didn't we? One of our videos. And we were looking at the show at the school gardens then.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important if they can do something, because I think it's really important that all children know a little bit about growing and where the food comes from, just to, excuse the pun, sow the seed, as it were.
Absolutely. Well, just because I have two children in secondary school, their primary school had an allotment, and what they would do is, obviously it was kind of parcelled out the time in the allotment, but perhaps one lesson a week, one term a year, their class might get to go out there, do a bit of watering, perhaps sow some seeds, and it was wonderful for them. And then, as you say, they're now both in secondary school where there isn't anything like that, but there could be.
Yeah, I mean, personally for me, I would sooner do a GCSE O-level, it was in my day, in agricultural, horticultural science. That would have been more use, I think, moving forward in life than doing geography or history.
Yeah.
So,
probably. And as you say, kind of like a useful day-to-day skill rather than just something academic that perhaps... but hey, look, hopefully somebody's listening out there in the Ministry of Education.
When we change the world.
Exactly, that's right. So, yeah. But obviously, from Amrit's point of view, I think because he had that background and then his career was a geologist, which is completely different, petroleum geologist in the North Sea, he'd still got those skills to go back to. And I think what he's done... It sounds really, really interesting, because he's taken on this farm that was quite established, grown a huge range, and his plants, we saw the quality of his plants. They were amazing and such a wide range of really unusual chilies that you don't get anywhere else.
Fantastic. Well, if I'd studied GCSE horticulture, what would I be doing in my garden this week?
What would you be doing? Well, if you had, you wouldn't be asking me that question, would you?
There is that.
Well, I mean, it's sort of lots of things are slowing down a little bit in the garden now, but to keep flowers going for as long as you can, with all your lovely perennials, or if you've got lovely seasonal bedding plants in your containers and your hanging baskets, I think one of the things that is really important at this time of the year is just keep deadheading. It's not the most exciting of jobs, but every time you walk by...
I'm going to fly the flag for deadheading, because it's lovely. On an evening, you can just go out, little pair of secateurs, you can take a drink out with you and just pot around the garden and just snip off those deadheads.
Just a quick point on that, because you did a video about rose deadheading recently, and I took your advice, and one of our roses had a single stem going quite high up, and I realised it was probably getting longer every season. So I did what you suggested and took it right back, and I'm seeing the benefits of that. I'm seeing new. There you go. It's almost like what you do is useful.
Yeah, because
I we could do a GCSE in this.
Yeah, I might write the curriculum for it. Exactly.
Anyway, sorry, as you were saying.
Deadheading. I love deadheading.
Because that will just promote more, and especially if you can give a little bit of water and a liquid feed, it will promote flowers for much later on in the season.
But definitely keeping on top of it rather than letting it go too far, and then you've got to do loads. So it is better to potter out every other evening and have a go.
It is. And the plants look better as well when you've got rid of all those dead heads on them. We've had a spell of warm weather, which has been quite nice, and I think potentially there's more to come, hopefully. So if you've had anything newly planted in your garden this spring, like we've planted in our garden lots of shrubs and perennials, don't assume because they were planted 3 months ago they're going to be okay. Their roots won't have got right down into the soil. So you do need to give them an occasional water, not every day, but maybe once a week. Just soak around the soil. If you think the plant looks a little bit stressed and it's not growing right, that soaking once a week will really, really perk it up and keep it going. And then finally, and this is something we have covered in one of the videos as well, but if you haven't seen the video, it's there on YouTube. But if you've not, I'll remind you.
We'll put it in the show notes, the link to
We'll
it.
stick it in the show notes. That's a good idea, Sean. That if you've got tomatoes, and ours are doing reasonably well now, they're all a bit late this year, take out the growing tip. They'll probably be 5-6 feet tall. Take out that growing tip. That stops them producing more growth and flowers, so they can concentrate all their energy on the flowers and the fruit that are already there. So they'll swell, they'll develop. More importantly, they'll ripen. If you don't do that, what will tend to happen is you'll find that they'll keep flowering right the way through till October, but those late flowers will never ever have the chance to develop and ripen. So by taking the top off now, it means you won't get lots of green tomatoes, and they'll all ripen by October.
Good stuff.
Delicious. Love them. We've got an unusual beefsteak tomato this year, haven't we? It's a really, I didn't know it was a different variety. I just assumed it was our normal kind of red one, but it's got a really dark skin, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's almost like a maroony purple
Yeah.
colour, isn't it? You're going to ask me the name, and I
I
can't
am.
remember it. It was
Oh,
one
right.
that I got from the Harrogate
Sorry.
Spring Show off a grower, and I thought I'd never heard of it before, and I cannot remember what it is.
Shall I nip out? Because I happen to be here today. I could go and look at the label, because I'm sure you've labelled
I've
it.
got a label in the pot.
I'll have a look later.
Yeah,
I'll let you know.
Put it on the show notes.
Yeah.
Put it in the show notes. Maybe we need to get back to Amrit and find out a bit more about some of the plants he's got on his stand.
Okay. Do you want to just talk us through some of these beautiful plants? Because we always think of a chili pepper as a green plant, but some of these have got coloured foliage and they've got fruits of all different shapes and colours on there. So shall we just have a look at one or two that you've got?
Let's just go along the line and just pick out some interesting ones. So here we've got a purple tiger. That one is it's got variegated foliage and fruits. The fruits themselves are variegated, but it's not often the case that you can see them. Sometimes the variegation is sort of hindered by environmental conditions, but quite often you'd get one or two that have that striped pattern on the fruits there. And people would grow that as an ornamental plant inside. You know?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's beautiful, isn't it? Even if you didn't get the chilies on it, that beautiful... It's a cream and sort of purpley pink variegation on it.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. And there's some sort of mottling that goes on, which is a bit... And it's strange because that comes true to form from the seeds themselves. And the flowers themselves are quite attractive when you look in there. They're quite dainty looking things. I've always wanted to do a bit of macro photography and document the different flowers because they're different across the different species of chilies as well.
Yeah. Now, looking, these are all labelled, and this one, as you say, is called Purple Tiger. Now, you've got on here the heat level. So that's something that when people are growing chilies, that the people that are really into their chilies, they want to know about the heat,
Exactly,
don't they?
yeah.
So what does that mean?
So that heat level there, it's written as SHU, so that's Scoville heat units. So that was originally developed by American American pharmacists, and it was sort of a very unscientific approach where it would be the amount of times the sugar water solution needs to be diluted before you can not perceive the heat of the chili that you're eating. So it's very subjective. But it became the way to rank the heat level. And then over time, well, nowadays we would be using liquid and gas chromatography to establish the exact amount of capsaicin, which is the heat creating compound in the chili. And then we would sort of backwards, I say we, the scientists out there, there would be a backward calculation to convert an absolute molecular count of capsaicin back to the Scoville heat unit. Okay. So as a grower, you would be looking for things like, is it heatless at absolutely 0, all the way to about 10,000, which is going to be considered mild.
Okay.
A jalapeno is considered a mild chili, and that sits within the 4,000 to 6,000 Scoville heat units.
Okay.
And then that ramps up quickly to the millions.
Wow. So this one here at 6,000 to 9,000 isn't particularly hot.
No, that's going to be we'll consider it a medium to mild chili.
Right.
A bit picante. It's not going to blow your head off. But then you go from that to a Scotch bonnet, or well, even before a Scotch bonnet, you go from that to something which is like a cherry bomb when you're going to the 20,000 Scoville heat units, and then you climb up rapidly to Scotch bonnets and orange habaneros, which is 200,000, 250,000.
Right.
And it just ramps up after that. So it's a logarithmic scale, if you were to plot it, but it's exponential. It just sort of rises quite quickly.
And do people eat these super hot ones?
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that would eat the really super hot chilies. Sometimes it's people that you won't expect that would go for the hottest, but by and large, they're a minority. Most people would just want something which is a bit spicy to use in a stir fry or in a curry or something. And in that middle ground is where everybody wants something to go into a dish that'll suit their palate.
I know I don't eat the hot ones, but if I've had one by mistake, it seems to burn my mouth and tongue for ages. I can't get rid of it.
Yeah, it takes the best thing to do, there's a few different tips and tricks. What we use at the farm, we've got emergency milk. It's actually labelled up as emergency milk, so nobody uses it in their coffee. But at the farm, we've got a tasting station, and people can come by and taste the sauces and stuff we make. Now, when you make a chili sauce, it's not going to be the same heat level as the raw chili, but it's still extremely hot. So we kind of give the warning signs and everything, and people drink a bit of milk. And what the milk does, it sort of neutralizes the capsaicin in your mouth, and that's the best thing to help with it. Some people suggest using a bit of lime juice. It's a bit counterintuitive, lime or lemon juice, because that's very acidic, and you think that'll just inflame it even more. It does help. But there's nothing really to get rid of the heat other than just wait it out.
Yeah.
And then you sweat it out.
Exactly, yes.
Eventually.
Yeah. Okay. And then, we've got some, we're moving along the line here. You've got some that are very sort of small and compact that you could, this is a hot one. I've just spotted this one, Thai hot.
Yeah.
But it looks such a, innocent little plant, really compact. You could have that on a windowsill.
Yeah.
But that obviously packs a punch.
It does pack a punch. And that Thai hot there is a small little bushy plant. It produces a huge abundance of chilies on the crown. And they're just small little things. They're about 2 centimeters long, and you'll probably just need 1 or 2 of that in a stir fry. But that's the ideal kitchen windowsill chili plant for somebody who likes spicy food, not crazy hot, as in Scotch bonnet level, but wants a bit of heat. And you can get all the chilies you'd ever want in a year from that one plant sitting on your windowsill.
Right. Yeah. They are very attractive
And
as well.
within that category of small bushy, there's lots of variations in phenotypical appearances that people will go for. Some people might want something a bit more variegated, something a bit more meaty in terms of chili, so you get more for your money from the fruit themselves, and some people just want something that is nice to look at.
Yeah. So, here we are now, we're seeing all the lovely fruits on. It's coming into sort of late summer, too late to grow them from seed. So if anybody wants to have a go next year, a few tips on sowing the seed, when to get started, how to get it to germinate.
Sure. Mostly if you're growing hot varieties, so Scotch bonnets, Carolina Reapers, the really hot stuff, sow those early. We start sowing our seeds from the start of January, and for chili seeds, irrespective of whether or not it's hot or mild, they need heat and moisture. They don't need light to germinate, and we tend to germinate our seeds in pure vermiculite. The reason why we do that is because when it comes to pricking out, you then don't damage any of the root. Because normally when you're pricking out, if you're trying to lift it out of a soil-based medium, you hear a little snap and you feel a little ping when you're pricking your seedlings out. And we don't want that, because they're such a tender little seedling. So we say the best thing to do is give them the heat and the moisture, somewhere in an airing cupboard if you don't have a heated propagator, above a warm radiator where you can guarantee it to be at least minimum of 25 degrees. They will germinate at lower temperatures, down to about 20, but the germination rate drops off, and the length of time it takes to germinate means that there's more likely a chance that fungus will set in before the actual seed germinates.
Right, okay.
So it just ruins the seed. So you're better off giving it the heat and the moisture. And 100% humidity is even better, because it helps the seed germinate. And once they've germinated, then give them the light, move them to a sunny spot. And if you're fortunate enough to have a sort of grow lamps or little LED lamps, that little bit of extra light you can give it will just help it along. Because what you want is, you don't want a weakened seedling to start off the season with.
A good strong start.
Yeah, and that goes with anything else,
Yeah.
right? You're growing any other vegetable, you'd want to pick the best looking ones.
Yeah. And if you can't give those conditions, you sell young plants anyway in the spring, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. We have we sell them all the way through till mature plants. So we would sell seeds for those who want to grow from seeds and do the whole thing themselves. We'll sell plug plants, which are little small, sort of 6-inch tall plants grown in a plug, which we'll send out to you. and that gives you a head start because you have a small seedling. We've done the hard work for you, and then we then pot those on into 1 litre pots, and we sell those on as small 1 litre plants at the start of the main growing season, and then they eventually grow into those 1 litre pots and become mature plants that we still keep selling. So if you want something which is already fruiting and you just get the plant, put it on your windowsill and start using the fruit right away, now is the time to do it.
Yeah.
If you want to start off the season with a bit of a head start, then a plug plant is what you'd use.
Yeah, good. Now, I've also noticed one, a lovely, I love variegated plants, hence the reason I like the purple one there. But you've got one called Fish.
Yes.
So, and that's got quite a backstory to it, hasn't it?
Good story, yeah. It's called a fish pepper, and it was originally bred in the eastern United States, along the eastern seaboard. We had a lot of plantations, a lot of slaves, and they, I don't know if they intentionally bred it. I don't know exactly I don't know if anybody knows if they intentionally bred this variety, but it came about there, and it's almost a heritage variety now where not many people are growing it, but it has really interesting genetics in that the plant is variegated, the fruits are very well variegated, and they're not extremely hot. They've got a nice medium to mild flavour, and the plant is a big bushy sort of white creamy coloured leaves mixed in with yellow with sort of green foliage, and it produces a huge abundance of chilies on there that look nice and taste good as well.
Yeah, I mean, it looks a beautiful plant, and that's true from seed.
True from seed,
so...
yeah. And what's interesting is that it's they would use a lot of those chilies in their seafood dishes, so it became those as fish peppers.
Right.
So if you're making any kind of seafood dishes inspired by that part of the world, that's the kind of pepper to go for.
Right, yeah. And it's great that you're keeping these old heritage ones going, because you save the seed every year, so you are collecting seed and distributing it, which is great. Otherwise they'd just die out,
It'll just die out. Yeah, I think to try and find, if you were to just Google fish pepper, you will find people selling seeds on eBay and Etsy and things like that. But you can't really guarantee what you're getting. It might not be a fish pepper. What we try and do is when we grow our seeds, we net the plants, so we make sure there's no cross-pollination. So the seeds that we then collect and sell on are true to form, so you can get you get what you're expecting from the plant.
Brilliant, great. It's lovely to see. So I mean, they are just beautiful, aren't they? They're ornamental, and obviously you can cook with them. Do you do a lot of cooking with them yourself?
Yeah, I tend to do a lot of classic cooking with the chilies. So if I'm making a Thai green curry, I want it to be punchy. I don't want it to be a sort of a weak flavored curry, and that deep green color comes from the chilies and the Thai basil. When you're making the green curry paste. Yeah. But a variety called Prick Chi Fa, if you were to look that up, that is the quintessential Thai chili that's used in a lot of Thai curries. And if I'm making that, I'll use those chilies. If I can't get it, I'll use a Thai hot. I'll use whatever I can find. But you really have to taste the chili before you use it in the dish, so you know what to expect out of it.
Yeah.
And that's sort of Asian cooking and stuff like that. Back to my roots in the Caribbean and making Caribbean curry, so you're making a goat curry or a jerk chicken or something. If you're making a jerk marinade, you need Scotch bonnets.
Right.
You can leave that out if you can't handle your heat, but it's not a jerk marinade without it.
Without it,
I don't know if the Jamaicans are like the French and very passionate about protecting their recipes, but you'd be hard pressed to find a jerk marinade that doesn't have Scotch bonnets.
Right, there you go. Okay, we're going to have to come around and do some tasting, aren't we, at some point? Just make sure I've got the milk on standby.
Yeah, exactly, the emergency milk.
Exactly. If people want to find out more about you, how can they do that?
Yeah, sure. So if you just go online and look for South Devon Chili Farm, will be the first thing that comes up. We have a website where you can purchase jams, chili sauces, barbecue sauces, all the stuff we make as finished product. You can also buy the plants, you can buy the seeds, you can get growing hints and tips on there. There's recipes, there's all sorts of information on the website, and you can also visit the farm. So the farm's open year round. During the summer months it's open 7 days a week. Outside of the season it's less than that, so always check on the website to see when we're actually open. But we're open to the public. We don't charge people to come by. They can come into the farm, taste all the products that we make, see the chilies growing, have a chat with a horticulturalist if they need any hints and tips. And we're just, we're open to everybody coming by. And you could actually see the chilies that are being grown to make into the produce. Mm-hmm. We've got an apple orchard which has got apple heritage varieties in there, and we use that in our apple jelly. So you can see everything that we make is grown at the farm.
Brilliant. It sounds great. So if anybody's down in Devon, that's the place to head for.
Definitely, yeah. And we don't charge to visit.
No, exactly.
It's free to visit.
Exactly. Right. Lovely. That's really, really interesting. And thanks for showing me all these beautiful chilies.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So did you have a taste of any of the chilies?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't get offered, but you know what? I don't like hot chilies.
No.
Although by the sound of it, the answer is you've got to have that emergency milk in the fridge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just worrying about it going off, though. That's what's worse, chili or off milk?
At what point do they then use it in their tea and coffee? Yes.
I think any dairy helps to neutralise it, doesn't it? So
It's
you could
alkali,
have a chunk
right?
of cheese or some cream. Yeah, I think it's
I
dairy.
want to know the vegan alternative.
Yeah.
Not because I'm vegan. I'm just intrigued.
Yeah.
What's a very strong alkali that's not?
Well, I guess you go down the lime route because he said you
Lime.
could have some lime or lemon juice, didn't he? Which counters it. I don't know the science of it at all, but.
Yes, a
Or
bit of
as,
milk
as
of
Amrit
what's
said,
it?
just wait it out. And
What's that stuff? Pepto-Bismol? Is that?
Oh, yes.
They drink
Milk
it in
of
America, don't they?
magnesia or
That's
something, wasn't it? Yeah.
Anyway, this is not medical information. Please do check with your GP before administering any of these medical things. But hey, it's free to visit. What a great activity for the kids in the summer.
Absolutely. I think we need to do a trip down there. That would be nice. You could incorporate that into a holiday.
For many years, so it would be nice. It would be fascinating to see all the polytunnels full of all those fruits developing that they use in all their pickles and chutneys and sauces and things. And I was really taken by the plant he had, the one called Fish.
Of course you were.
Because, and I'm going to get a packet of seed. He hadn't got any seeds for sale, but I'm sure he'll have some come the spring. Because I'd grow it just for the ornamental value. It was a beautiful variegated plant. And I've always been a fan of variegated plants. I think they're a bit like Marmite. You either love them or you hate them. And I know lots of people won't have anything variegated in their garden. And I in fact, we're sitting looking at a variegated aspidistra in the room with us as we speak. And I always try and incorporate as many variegated plants in the garden as possible.
Is that one in the middle variegated as well, or is that just dying?
Sean, there's nothing wrong with the one in the middle.
Do you want me to cut that?
No, not at all. No. The one in the middle
It's meant to look like
the
that.
one in the middle is a monstera that's trailing a little bit. Yes, and then we've got a. Has it got a yellow leaf on it?
It has, yeah.
We'll take that one off, but it's not a variegation, Sean. It's not a variegation. Blimey, it doesn't come very often, and then when he does, he criticises
He eats the
house
biscuits
plants.
and criticises the house.
I think it's just because you keep leaving me behind and going through all these shows without me.
We need to get you to a show, don't we? But no, it was beautiful. It got a really pronounced variegation. And what I found really fascinating about it, apart from the fruits and the backstory, is that it comes true from seed, because not many plants, variegated plants, will come true from seed. If you take the seed off, it will revert back to green. But this was a really strong plant, so I'd grow it just as a really ornamental plant with the benefit of the fruits.
And of course, we've got a video coming out in a week or so, which shows, we were chatting to Amrit on a video, weren't we? So you can actually see the fish pepper.
Absolutely,
and that gorgeous variegated fruit. Yeah. And I'm curious about using different chilies with different dishes. So obviously the fish pepper was used a lot for fish dishes. But I've been onto their website, and they've got a section for eating, which really sort of drew my attention. Loads of recipes on there as well. So there's a couple that I really want to have a go at. But just a really good idea, I thought, was, if you make some parkin or a gingerbread, then add in some chili flakes, and it'll just give that, as well as the warmth from the ginger, you're getting that extra hit with some chili as well. So some dried chili flakes in there. It would be an overall flavour, because you're going to bake it within the cake, aren't you? Yeah. But there was a really nice one that I definitely am going to try in the next week or so, because we've got quite a lot of cucumbers coming in our greenhouse at the moment, seeing as you planted 2 by accident for some reason. And there's a cucumber sauce. It's more of a cucumber salad, really, I think. So you get half a cucumber, peel it, and then slice it really thinly. And then just dissolve a little bit of sugar in some boiling water, and then add in some white wine vinegar, a little bit of salt, chop up some shallots, and then a couple of red chillies, all finely chopped, and then just mix that all together into your sugar, the water with the sugar in it, and then pour that over the cucumber. Just leave it to cool down a little bit and develop all those flavours, and then you can serve that. And I just think the cucumber is going to mix really well with that sort of chili sauce on top. So, yeah, good one to try.
I was just thinking when you were saying about the parking and adding chili, because of course, there's that history of chocolate with chili, isn't it, from the Aztec kind of, fabulous. Well, look, if you've got a question for the team, drop us an email, info@potsandtrowels.com. And we've got a couple of questions for Martin to answer at the minute.
Okay.
We're going to start with the one that I've found on YouTube, or somebody's posted on YouTube. And it's about when you're planting up a border. Now, I haven't got my glasses on, so I'm stretching my phone away from me to read exactly what, because it's iDoc Matthew, who I'm guessing is Matthew, who's an eye doctor. They say they are a novice gardener and they wonder how to get the number of new plants needed for a border correct without making it look too bare.
That's a good question.
Or too full.
Or too full.
That's another.
It is a tricky one, and I've been planting borders for a long time, and you don't always get it right because when I'm planting out, for example, when we've been setting out the mixed borders here with a selection of shrubs and perennials, look at the label. If it's a shrub that's going to grow 2 meters tall and 2 meters across, then obviously you've got to think that's what it will be like in a few years' time. So you've got to space the plants working on the measurements that they've got. And that's really the thing to do, because if you do plant them much closer, you'll get much faster effect and the border will fill out. But then within 4 or 5 years, it's going to be so overcrowded and the plants will spoil. Now, if they're herbaceous perennials, that isn't so much of a problem because they can be dug up easily, lifted, divided, replanted, moved around. But if it's shrubs that you plant in, you really do need to work on those spacings. So what I would always suggest, if it's a mixed border, put your shrubs nice and wide and then fill in with perennials, because you can change those at a later date. But it's never going to look full in the first season. If it's a permanent one, if you're planting bedding plants, then that's different. But if you're planting perennials and shrubs, you've got to accept the first season you'll still see a lot of soil. The second season you'll see less soil, and by year 3 hopefully you won't see much soil at all.
So it's just giving it a bit of time, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Another question on YouTube is from Rhiannon Davies, who sounds like a Welsh name, but I can't guarantee they're going to be in Wales. But it's on our pen, stem and cuttings video. Without a bag and with a spray, do you also still water the pot over a course of a few weeks? Now, I can't exactly remember this video, but I think you put a plastic bag over the cuttings at the end.
Yes, so I had a small plant pot with some compost in there, and then we put the cuttings around the edge of the plant pot, small short cuttings, watered them, and then put a clear polythene bag over it, which just creates that humidity and a sort of a bit of condensation there so that they don't wilt, and put that on a cool windowsill out of direct sun. So no, if you haven't got a polythene bag or a mister, because I did talk about misting them as well with a little hand sprayer, then what you need to do is just keep the compost moist. But it's really important you don't put them somewhere too warm or sunny, because they will wilt very quickly. So, even if you haven't got a sprayer, if you can put something over, just drape a piece of cling film or something over, that will help to trap that humidity in there.
And is that dependent on the time of year or anything, or is that just generally, is that okay outside? I mean,
you could do it outside if you put them somewhere cool, against sort of a shady wall where it's cool, but the sun will wilt, within hours if you're not careful. So you need to keep the compost moist, and that misting does help. But you could just, as I say, put even a piece of newspaper over them for the first few days. It doesn't matter if you block some of the light out. It's just about keeping them cool and turgid.
The misters don't need to be anything fancy, do they? You can just get a little spray bottle really cheaply from supermarkets, can't you?
£1 or £2. Yeah, it's worth getting one, because they're good for spraying other plants as well and misting
house
them.
plants
you can use them for the ironing as well, then, right?
You can.
I use them all the time, Sean.
That's what I was
or
thinking.
you could just get a steam iron, to be fair, but yeah.
Ooh, no. You've just got the old cast iron one by the fire that we hot up.
Oh, fantastic. Well, look, remember, if you've got a question for Martin, drop us an email, info@potsandtrowels.com. But otherwise, I think we're probably about there.
We are, yeah. So, we'll be back again next week, though. So we'll see you all then.
Look forward to it. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Watch the videos on YouTube or Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter or X, and subscribe to the podcast and never miss a thing. For more information, go to potsandtrowels.com.